Hey guys, FilthyRobot here, bringing you the second half of the How to Draft Guilds of Ravnica guide video. This is Pack 1, Pick 1, where we're going to try some of the theory in action, the applied theory. So let's take a look at this. Let's take a look at this pack. Pack is fairly interesting and it actually has a fair number of options here worth discussing. The rare is not very good. It's just a 2/2 vigilant creature for 1 white, 1 other, which in of itself isn't terrible, although it's really counterfeited by shield mates, which are rarity 2/2 vigilant creatures for 2 that are white or green. It has a secondary ability where you can sacrifice it to destroy legendary enchantments, artifacts, or creatures, of which there aren't very many in this set. There's a couple legendary creatures, Aurelia and Niv-Mizzet come to mind, I think Lazev is one as well. But in general, there's not a lot of targets for Bounty Agent. You're rarely going to see it trigger, so just not very exciting as a rare. There's a couple decent commons here: the Spinal Centipede, the Command the Storm being quite a bit better than the Centipede, the Leapfrog, and the Hired Poisoner all being okay. Definitely playable cards, same with the Dazzling Lights. But really the highlight of this pack are the 3 uncommons, and all 3 of them are fairly defensible first picks, I think. I'll talk through the strengths and weaknesses of each, and then which one I would pick. The Legion Guildmage is exactly what Boros needs. It is an early drop. It's a 2 mana 2/2, of course, which is quite good. Or rather, quite what Boros needs, creatures on curve, but then has 2 incredible abilities. 3 mana, tap another creature is great for forcing in damage. You can tap at the end of their turn and then beginning of your turn, tap again if you need to for forcing through 2, or just keep one of their better blockers tied down. It's a mana sink for Boros in the mid game, which Boros really needs, since once Boros throws its creatures down, uses its combat tricks, it often is at a point where it's top decking or just sitting on flooding on lands, which is really painful for Boros. The late game, when you have 6 mana developed, you're able to just burn out your opponent directly to the face with the Guild Mage. It almost always draws removal because it's powerful enough that you have to deal with it. Great card. Beacon Bolt, this is removal that works twice with Jumpstart. You get to do remove once and then remove again a little bit later, which is amazing. That's super high value in limited format. And then the Nightveil Predator as a 3/3 flying Death Touch Hexproof. It's an air unit that no one can remove with spells, so you have to, as a player, be willing to, if your opponent has controls this and you want to kill it, you better have a way that doesn't target it directly, like maybe kicking it back to their hand through like dispersal and then having them discard it, or they better be willing to block with it or attack into one of your creatures and you have some way to trade with it, because you cannot directly interact with that, which is super nasty. Of these, I think the Legion Guildmage and the Nightveil Predator are just slightly higher power level than Beacon Bolt. The issue with Beacon Bolt is sometimes you just don't have the cards to utilize it. You don't have either the cards in your deck, which is pretty unlikely, but more likely what you don't have is enough cards in your graveyard. So it's not always early game removal, even though it costs 3 mana, and it's sometimes just not going to have enough cards in your deck in your graveyard to allow you to target what you want when you want. So it's a little bit more clunky, requires a little bit more setup, although it's very powerful. And I like the Guildmage a lot. I think it's right what Boros needs, but I don't think it's quite as individually strong as the Nightveil Predator. Very close for me between these, but I think I come down on the Nightveil Predator side. It actually represents a win condition. I don't think it's a bomb in the same way that slamming a Doom Whisperer down is a bomb, but it is a extraordinarily difficult to deal with creature that is all around just really nasty and can very much steal games. So right on the border of a bomb for me. I'm picking it here over the Beacon Bolt or the Legion Guildmage, but really close from my perspective. All right, pick 2. Oh wow. Okay, we just got rewarded. Very luckily rewarded. I guess I should have talked about what we were sending on. I mean, let's just quickly, I know it's not on the screen, guys, but the cards we sent on to worth considering as well when we're looking at our strategies for picking, not only the power of our first card, but also what signals we send down the line. We send a white vigilant creature down, the rare. We send the Boros Guildmage down, which is white-red, and we send the Command the Storm down, which is also potentially red. So if we had taken a Boros Guildmage, we would have still been passing Command the Storm, as well as the Guild Agent, although I don't think the Bounty Hunter Guild Agent girl is good enough to consider a signal one way or the other. And we also pass Beacon Bolt, which is probably good enough to first pick in some packs. So there is something to be said also about taking the only really good blue-black card in that pack, that it's unlikely someone is getting the signal from us that Dimir is open in that pack. Now, that said, we're not going to give quite as clear a signal on this one. This is a very straightforward pick. We would like to be playing the Nightveil Predator, although we're not guaranteed to, but there is one card that is much more powerful than all the other cards in this pack, and that's Quasi-Duplicate. The rare is really good. Creating a token that's a copy of creature you control for 3 mana is great. You pick any card, including like Nightveil Predator, and suddenly you have a bunch of very powerful cheap creatures that come out. And with Jumpstart, you can do it twice. Jumpstart is best taken advantage of by Izzet, but it's not like Dimir can't take advantage of that still. It's a very easy pick for me. Let's talk through the rest of the picks though. Demotion, a Lotless Giant being Demotion being a very aggro-oriented card, generally very good in Boros if you have a low to the ground deck where you're not worried about racing, because that's what this card does, in which case it becomes a 1 mana removal spell, which is great. Lotless Giant, a finisher for an Undergrowth themed deck like Golgari. But at 7 mana, even if it only does 3 or 4 damage, it's a huge body. So you can use it as a finisher in a Dimir deck. Crater Maker, a very solid little 2-drop for Boros. Or is it? It's just the fact it's a creature that's also a removal makes it very, very solid and very versatile. Really like the card, but not good enough to pick over a Quasi-Duplicate in my opinion. Other cards of note, the Hired Poisoner and Hawk. Hawk, great in aggro decks, sets up a flying evasive creature to begin with that makes your life swings, gives you life while draining their life, which is great. Hired Poisoner, very efficient creature to trade with, not bad at all. Wojak Bodyguard, a 3/3 for 3 that as long as you have other creatures is really powerful with the Mentor ability. The Dissident as a totally reasonable 2-drop, doesn't suck when you draw it on 2, doesn't suck when you draw it later in the game. And Whisper Agent as a really nice flash surveil creature that often trades with the threats you need removed. I'd be happy to take a Whisper Agent in any Dimir deck and most Golgari decks. So a lot of decent cards here, but it's just the Quasi-Duplicate is head and shoulders above. This becomes a win condition, especially coupled with our first pick. The idea of Quasi-Duplicating Nightveil Predators is just ridiculous. I've actually, this card is also really synergetic with some other cards. One of my sealed drafts, my first Ravnica sealed draft, I had a Quasi-Duplicate with the Whisper Muse, which is the guy, the 1/5 for 4, who whenever you cast a spell, sorcery or instant gives you a 1/1 flying token, and I would Quasi-Duplicate the Whisper Muse twice and just generate a million tokens and then have 3 guys who triggered off sorceries and instants. Just a disgusting card. All right, so we're gonna pick up Quasi-Duplicate here. Pretty easy pick for us. Again, we should have looked at what we sent on. We sent on some good red cards. The Crater Goblin, we sent on a decent blue-black card or black card with the Dimir Agent, as well as a decent like Death Touch Poisoner and stuff like that. But not super clear signal from that pack either, I suppose. If we send on yet another red card, we're going to have signaled 3 open red cards to our opponents sitting next to us, likely pushing them towards red as we keep giving them value card after value card. For us, this pack is not terribly exciting. Let's look at the cards that are of interest. Discovery Dispersal is fine. It's not great, but it's not bad. You really want Surveil synergies to make this card good, but it can be mana fixing or late game. If you draw it, you're never that upset. And if you do have discard synergies, the Dispersal portion could be good. Dispersal is one of the few cards that will deal with like a Nightveil Predator, for example. This card's fine. We're happy to pick it. It's a decent power level, but not amazing. The Ocarina Assassin is quite good. Not good enough to splash for, but a powerful card, Death Touch, and forcing all your opponents to block is a very, very powerful effect. You can use it to break open a cleared board or just hold off your opponents, or hold off if you just keep this creature untapped. Oftentimes your opponent does not want to play, or even if you just have it on the field, your opponent doesn't want to play valuable creatures into the field because they're going to be forced to trade with the assassin. If you can pump it at all, it can do that effect either multiple times or against multiple creatures. Powerful creature, not super great, but powerful. Skyline Scout is a very decent little aggro white card. It's going to be evasive when you need it to be, and otherwise is just a fine 2/1 body for 2. For us though, if we're looking to be blue-black, which we probably are, although we're not committed entirely yet, the blue-black cards are these 3. These are not even close in power level to Discovery Dispersal, which still isn't great. The most powerful card in this pack is probably Direct Current. It's a very versatile spell that is both okay in Boros and great in Izzet. It's reusable removal. 3 mana for 2 damage is kind of expensive, but it can go anywhere. Face, Planeswalker, creature, doesn't matter. And getting to use it twice is a very good way to deal with your extra lands a little bit later with the jumpstart mechanic on that. This is the best card. We've sent red now twice. We sent a Guild Mage, a Crater Maker, and now a Direct Current. We're pretty far from red, so that's okay for us, but we got to be aware of what signals we're making here. The only other card of note is probably the Siege Worm. We're no way near it. This is certainly not something we want, but it's a decent creature. It's one of the Convoke Chaos if you are forced to end up in like Selesnya, and you can certainly play this as Golgari. It's not like Convoke can only be used by Selesnya. It's just Selesnya has a little bit better options for generating cheap creatures to get this out faster. But for us, it's a pretty clear Discovery Dispersal. We'll grab that and keep moving on. All right, next pick for us. Wow. So it also looks like people to our right, you know, not that there are people. This is another direct current that we're passing on. Somebody's getting a sick deck to our left, but also the person to our right who's passing to us isn't in red. They don't seem to be in blue either. They passed a quasi-duplicate to us on pick 2, and then they packed a Discovery Dispersal. So, I mean, we would place them on either like green or maybe white, or maybe just speculating. We can't tell what they're doing. Who knows what their other cards were. It's weird to see a quasi-duplicate get passed. I'm not sure that would happen in person, especially I don't remember if it was an uncommon or common that went. But weird to see that. Maybe premium removal, maybe premium black removal, like a Price of Fame. Maybe you'd pick over quasi-duplicate. That's possible. So, but we are still seeing black-blue cards, although not just black cards. We haven't seen like black removal be passed our way, so potentially that person could be in black. It's worth this trying to figure out what's going on if you can, if you have the wherewithal. Now we're doing this at a much slower pace in MTG Arena right now versus bots. There's no time limit. We could do this all day and discuss these in person, and when you're drafting on other clients, and eventually on MTG Arena when they implement the people draft, and when you're drafting with people, there's going to be a time limit, so you don't have quite as much time to think about it. But these are the types of things that if you can find the wherewithal to even think about a couple of them each time that you look at a card, then you're doing well. You're ahead of the game. So for us, there's nothing worth speculating on here. The Direct Current is good, but it's not a very splashable card. It's low mana cost, but high in terms of the number of symbols you need. You need 2 red sources for this, which makes it a pretty unpleasant card to splash if you're not in red. It's possible we could be red-blue splashing black, but it's not very easy to splash Night Veil Predator, and Night Veil Predator is still stronger than a Direct Current. For us, we're looking at Whisper Agent versus Burglar Rat are the 2 cards for us. We have no Surveil synergies quite yet, or rather Surveil payoffs. I like a Burglar Rat, but I'm expecting that somewhere along the line we will pick up Surveil synergies. I'm probably taking Whisper Agent number 1 over Burglar Rat number 1. This card's a little better in Golgari, but it's just fine in Dimir. It's not bad at all. But I would like to have some synergies with this before I start investing in this when there's other cards that I would like a little bit more. This guy tends to trade well, and for Dimir early game is about stabilizing the board, not getting run over by Boros, setting up for some of your better payoffs and your late game stuff. And I think the Whisper Agent is going to do that a little bit better for me than the Burglar Rat. So for me, it's Whisper Agent, and it's not too far away from the Rat. It's just a little bit better, but it's not very close on anything else on this board. All right, next pick. So another Unicorn passed our way. I don't love this card. I don't think it's super high power, but we're now seeing the only cards we haven't been seeing passed from our right black cards, basically. So maybe we assume they're in black. There's a Dimir Guildgate, an Unexplained Disappearance, and it never happened in the colors that we're looking at. But we're not necessarily in these colors, although with 2 multicolored cards, this could be just pure blue. This could be just pure blue. So you can play these in an Izzet deck, all 3 of those. And then the Night Veil Predator. So it's possible we're in blue-red. Maybe we should have been a little bit more keen on considering the Direct Current last pick. But I'm not super excited about that over a Whisper Agent. It looks like blue-black is at least available to us. Or at least a blue portion of it anyways. So when I look at these, between Unexplained Disappearance and the Guildgate, I don't love this card. It's okay. You really want Surveil synergies to get value out of it, or have a bunch of, not bad with counterspells either, of course, but not something I'm super excited about right now. I'm probably on the Dimir Guildgate plan over Unexplained Disappearance. I'll play it if I pick it up in a deck, but with this many, this is already a double blue on 3. We're probably never casting quasi-duplicate on 3, so it's maybe not that relevant, but we are going to want to be passing Night Veil Predator, and this would be this card can be a card that's challenging to cast if your mana base isn't real good. I wouldn't mind 1 Guildgate. Maybe it's a little bit early to be picking the Guildgate up over the Unexplained Disappearance, but I'm not super in love with this card either, and I would like to see some Surveil payoff cards in the near future. And again, it is possible that we don't end up in black-blue, but rather end up in red-blue, although it seems unlikely since we passed so many good red cards to begin with. But if we are in that case, Izzet doesn't actually have a lot of cards that it often wants to discard. Yes, you can discard lands in Izzet, and sometimes you will just to fix it, or if you're in a shape where you're digging for a certain card, of course, Surveil is useful. It's not like Surveil is a bad thing, but if you're running a lot of jumpstart cards, lands are actually pretty good. There's a lot of times when I play Izzet decks and I'll like flash in like a Whisper Agent in the mid game, and I don't throw away a land there because I want it to feed my radical ideas and I want it to feed my my Chemist's Insights and my other Jumpstart style cards. So I don't know that I would play Unexplained. This card would be a little bit less exciting for me to play in a card without a bunch of Surveil payoffs, like a Is It deck. I'm going to take the Dimir Guildgate. We'll see. All right, next pick, back to the being rewarded for being blue-black. There is both a Whispering Snitch and a Notion Range here. The Snitch is, it is technically a payoff card for Surveil. It does trigger every time I Surveil, but it's not a very exciting creature or body for me, and I'm not so excited by the drain effect that can only happen once per turn, as I am a draw card that also surveils. It's a very powerful draw card. Other cards of note in here, we could certainly play a Centipede. It wouldn't be the end of the world. More red cards. Ornery Goblin's pretty good, especially for aggro red, so it's a bit weird to, I mean, it's not super late yet, it's only pick 6, but this card is decent enough that it could get snapped up earlier. Seeing a white-green card pass, not a particularly strong one. Seeing a Crushing Canopy is no surprise there. Mesmerist is quite weak. I'll grab the Notion Rain and be fine about it. The Snitch isn't bad. We will need to think about creatures at some point. All right, no black cards in this pack. A bunch of white and red cards. Not particularly powerful white and red cards. Gird's okay for an early game deck. Swath Cutter's a little bit slow for Boros, and not that great of a creature. It's cool if you get to attack with it. You can do fun things with it, but it's not great for a Boros deck. So our curve is pretty heavy right now. I mean, not really. This is a lot of time, a 2-drop, but something like that. I think I'm on Dazzling Lights #1 over Wall of Mist. It's just, I like this as a combat trick. It's particularly good versus low to the ground decks like Boros, where you are both sometimes screwing up their mentoring and also for very low mana cost, saving one of your creatures and often killing one of their creatures. It can be just a nice little savior. Wall of Mist is a little bit less good, I think, in this format than other formats. Because of mentoring, the type of deck you would normally sub in Wall of Mist versus would be an aggro deck or a mid-range deck that has creatures that this basically negates. But you don't really want to be passively blocking mentor creatures, because then they get to keep mentoring and then they accumulate value while not, yes, they're not directly dealing you damage because you Wall of Mist, but they're pumping up other creatures which are dealing you damage, which is not really where you want to be. So I would still bring in a Wall of Mist versus like a Selesnya deck. Like, it will deal with the 4/4 Convoked Centaur quite nicely, but it's less exciting to me in this format than it is in other formats. So I'll pick up the Dazzling Lights here and be fine with it. Not super excited, not particularly upset about it. Less of an exciting pick here for us. More cards of, I mean, this is starting to get to the end of the pack. They're not particularly good cards. Invert and Vent I don't think is great. And I mean, we do have Quasi-Duplicate as a win condition, so it is kind of amusing that we could search for search for that with Invert and Vent. I don't know if Invert and Vent, what it considers Discovery Dispersal. Does it consider this card a sorcery or an instant? I don't actually know. Could I do it as either? I don't know that either. But a part of me is actually kind of amused by that. Maybe we splash red for the Quasi-Duplicate. The other card that stands out, these are low enough impact cards and it's early enough in the draft that these cards are not worth picking for me. I don't think I need to speculate on Is It Locket right now. The Moonmark Painter I think is very bad. I think it's mediocre in Golgari and bad everywhere else. So it's between the Veiled Shade, the Glaive, and the Invert and Vent for me. The Glade is a fairly grindy win condition. It's very slow, but it's quite powerful. Giving one of your creatures Vigilance and Menace and plus like often 2 or 3 depending on your guild gates can be strong, especially in a grindy game. And Invert and Vent, the invert portion is often not very good, and it's very clunky and slow as a 6 mana spell at Invent, but this is a very powerful effect at 6 mana. Pulling an instant and a sorcery out of your deck and putting them into your hand is very, very powerful. It could call our Quasi-Duplicate to us, which would be kind of amusing, or draw cards, but I suspect that I'm not going to want to splash red for this, and I certainly don't think the invert portion's worth it. What I'll do is pick up a Glaive. It might come in, I doubt it'll start main deck, but if I pick up like 2 or 3 more guild gates, maybe what I end up doing is running enough of them and like a grindy control mirror, like where I'm playing another Dimir deck, I pull in the Glaive and use it as a win condition. So we'll see. I'll drag it to sideboard for now. All right, next pick. I don't really want a second Dazzling Lights right now. There's no cards here that are particularly exciting. This is very far from where I want to be. This guild gate shares no colors with the 2 primary colors I'm sorting. So if this were a Golgari guild gate, or if this were a Is It guild gate, I might consider grabbing it just in case I want to do some splashing. But as Boros, it's 2 colors that don't share anything with me. It's a little bit less exciting. So really it comes down to the Dazzling Lights that never happened for me. Of these cards, I prefer the Dazzling Lights that never happened, but I already have a Dazzling Lights. I don't mind running 2, But I don't mind running Never Happens sometimes either. This is a way to deal with threats that you can't deal with that hit the board, like other Night Veil Predators, for example. It's also, if you're very light on removal, something you could do. It's also sometimes just something you can do if you're, like, for example, on the draw and they're on the play. Sometimes and they're not pressuring you heavily, you can sometimes do things like just take advantage of your card advantage to do something like this. But I'm going to take the Dazzling Lights number 2 before I take the Never Happen. If I end up with one of these at some point, I can live with it. It might even come in a couple times, but it's not something I generally want to start in my deck. Just a little bit slow. Same issue. This Guildgate doesn't share a lot with us color-wise. I don't really want to be on an Is It Locket plan, but maybe that would be a second source. I think it's a little bit more likely for Is It Locket over Selesnya Guildgate to be useful, but all of these cards are pretty bad. If you're to the point where, probably not yet, because I'll probably still speculate on this, but if this were pack 2, I'd probably just take the Demotion. I don't rare draft very often, although in person, if you were to sit down, maybe I'd rare draft. And this isn't uncommon, which seems like it's a totally useless rare draft, but the way it works in Arena is if you already have 4 of a card, the rarer the card is, the more percentage it puts you forth for your the chests, and the chests give you wild cards, which lets you craft more. So taking an uncommon would be the most efficient use of this, but I'll take the Is It Locket as a speculative pick in case we end up with something red splashed. There's nothing here I'm very close to playing. We might possibly end up with the Vigor Spore Worm as like final win condition. It's easier to splash as with 1 green mana source and being a 6 mana total spell, and like maybe if we have a couple flyers, this becomes something that we can win a game with. But at the moment, I'm not quite there yet for that level of desperation, and I don't want to play a Mesmerist, but sometimes it will be fine to have a 2-drop. I don't have a 2-drop yet. It'll be fine to have something there. It's annoying to see the 3rd Dazzling Lights. I don't think there's many games in which I'd bring in 3, maybe a very, very aggressive Boros deck, and even then, that seems like I'm pushing it. Sonic Assault seems pretty far from us, but again, we're currently all blue cards except Notion Rain and Predator. We could end up in Is It, although it feels unlikely. So I'll kick the Sonic Assault. Maybe it will be useful. There's the Never Happened. I'll take the I'm never going to play max. Well, I might maximize velocity. That was an Is It. I don't think so, though. Safe pick is the maximize velocity. This is greeting the sideboard. Let's safe pick. This is a tutorial video, right? And a Wall of Mist. All right. So pick 1 of pack 2. We're passing red cards left and right. So Experimental Frenzy is very good to a low down with a low down deck in limited. It's a huge source of card advantage. It's very difficult to remove in limited. It's a bomb card. I don't really want it now when I'm not in red and not close to it. I don't have a deck that's particularly low to the ground. Inescapable Blaze is a very nice effect too. It's uncounterable reach. That is very strong very strong in this format. Not a lot of other things do that. It's a great Boros card. It's fine in Is It. Totally fine card. I don't mind that. Beacon Bolt we've talked about. Also a great sorcery here. It's 2 removal pieces in 1. Hypothesizzle is incredible with Jumpstart. This is going the opposite direction now. So the last guy, we passed all the red cards. I guess I'm going to pass all the red cards the other direction too. But for me, it's 100% the Murmuring Mystic, leaving it out as the conversation. But this is the card that I was telling you guys about. Having a quasi-duplicate in your deck with the Murmuring Mystic becomes hilarious. You duplicate the Mystics and then cast a couple other, like, you get birds as you're casting this and then get a ton of even more birds later, and it becomes this ridiculous win condition. Really happy to see a Mystic here. We now have a second win condition for the deck. We have a Night Veil Predator as well as a Murmuring Mystic. Seems really, really powerful for us. If the Strands wheel later, that would be great. I like Strands once I have things to sacrifice, like bird tokens or like rats or something like that. Not very excited about this card if I'm sacrificing quality creatures like a Whisper Agent or like a Vampire or something. But it is removal, and we don't have any removal yet, so it's something to think about if it comes around again. But for now, I'm on the Murmuring Mystic plan. The rest of these cards are lower impact. The Guildgate, the Pitiless Gorgon, the Fresh Fate Recruit are all fine. The Centipede's fine. The Hypothesis is quite good. Beacon Bolt's very good. Inescapable Blaze is very good, and Experimental Frenzy is very good. But I'm on the Mystic plan. All right, next pick. Seeing green, black, red cards all in here that are fine. The Whisper Agent's quite good. The Crawl Harpooner is amazing. This card's great. If you're in green, you want this. You want this as Selesnya to deal with air units. You want this as Golgari to build up your graveyard. You don't generally care too much about, even with like 1 creature in your graveyard, this kills almost all the air units in this format. It's just a really, really solid card, but we're nowhere near it. It's nowhere near where we want to be in our deck. Wand of Vertebrae is basically unplayable. Beam Splitter Mage is mediocre. You need a lot of combat tricks to really care about it, and you need to be pretty deep in Izzet to give a shit about that card. Just not really where I'm at right now. So between Severed Strands and Spinal Centipede are both fine. Our creature count's not amazing right now, but I still think I'm picking up Whisper Agents, even with no Surveil synergies quite yet, picking up Whisper Agents ahead of Spinal Centipedes. The Piston Fist Cyclops is okay, and with a Murmuring Mystic, there's a chance that we might actually want to push for spells a little bit harder than we would otherwise, but I don't think it's as good still as a Whisper Agent. The 3/2 flash is pretty perfect for black-blue control decks. You're going to be able to bring this in while holding up mana. You can mess with their ability to predict how you're going to block, what you're doing. It's just, and then the Surveil payoffs. We don't have any Surveil payoffs yet, so I'm really looking forward to getting a Surveil payoff. But this card is still good enough. I'd pick it over the Centipede or the Strands for now. This for pack 3, I might be considering the Strands because I don't have removal yet. Wow. I wish I don't know what my opponent picked. I know my opponent is a bot in this scenario, but man, look what they passed us. They passed us a Selesnya payoff card, a Izzet payoff card, and a Golgari payoff card, or rather just a bomb and a Golgari, as well as a decent Dimir creature and a very good Dimir creature. So what does that mean? So that means they're Boros? I mean, but they passed us red all of the first pack, so they're probably not Boros. So I don't know what the hell the bots ended up with over there, but if I try to logically figure out what the hell they're in, I'm a bit lost. Because bomb black green card. Anyways. So this is funny. I can play this in a Dimir deck, and I can even splash 1 or 2 green mana for finality. And it is a ridiculous card. Return 2 target creature hands from your graveyard to your hand is great for pretty much everything. It's in a limited format. You generate value out of that card, and finality is just like a surprise. I win the game. If I have a Nightveil Predator in play and then I finality the board, the game just ends. I win with my 5/5 flyer because it kills all their creatures. League Guild Mage is my favorite of the Guild Mages. I think perhaps not the best. I think probably the Boros Guild Mage is slightly better than the League Guild Mage, but I think the League Guild Mage is probably the second best Guild Mage, and it's by far the most fun Guild Mage out there. Copying instants of sorceries is just really fun and really good. If we were anywhere near Izzet, this would be a pick for me. As it is right now, what I'm struggling between is this would be a Surveil payoff. This card is very good early game with Surveil payoff. You can if you attack with it, especially with a bunch of Whisper Agents, your opponent often doesn't block it because it's 2 damage, and then you draw cards. Or if they do block it, it's Death Touch, and they have to deal with that. You can trade up for bigger creatures, you leaving it as a blocker and leaving instant Surveils for you. It's a nice payoff card for Dimir. That said, I can't give up either Watcher in the Mist or Fine Finality for Darkblade Agent. Both these cards are better. This is a 3/4 flyer, which is a huge flyer that surveils 2. It's another win condition for us, although I don't think it's anywhere near as good as Nightveil Predator because it can be vulnerable to removal, but it's good. It's really good. The question is, can I pass a Fine Finality? And I don't know if I can. Bringing back Nightveil Predator seems incredibly strong for our deck. Don't have a lot of creatures right now. My creature count, realistically, I hope not to run Mesmerist, and I hope not to run Wall of Mist. My creature count's quite low, but Whisper Agents trade a lot. Murmuring Mystic, if going to draw removal, and it would be nice to have back. I can play this as just the find, and it's okay. If I even splash a little bit of green, I get a bomb card. This actually, Murmuring Mystic survives that too, although the bird tokens don't. Man, versus a Watcher in a Mist. That's tough. That's really tough. So this becomes a consistency versus power thing again. So the decision that we're actually making is not, is the Watcher in the Mist or the Fine Finality a better card? It's, is it a better card in the deck that we've drafted? Watcher in the Mist fits directly into the deck that we're drafting here. Quasi-Duplicate is an amazing card with Watcher in the Mist. Watcher in the Mist fits our win conditions so far. At the moment, our deck is beating them down in the air, either with Nightveil Predators or Million Bird tokens or something similar. This card is another flying threat. It still has all the Surveil synergies. Not that we have payoffs for that yet, but hopefully we're still going to have a Surveil synergy. This card is really good for us. The Find Finality is pretty good. As I said, it generates value, but it's slow. Dimir already runs into the issue that one of the ways it loses is it gets outpaced before it takes over the game with its late game control cards. I already have good slower options with Quasi-Duplicate, Nightveil Predator, Murmuring Mystic, and Notion Rain all being fairly good slow cards for me. I'm not sure I'm probably with the Dimir deck going to end up with not a million creatures. It'd probably be closer to 12 or 13 or 13 or 14 compared to like 16 or 17. And at the moment, I have no other creatures that survive a fine finality besides the Mystic and the Nightveil Predator. I'm talking myself into that Watcher the Mist, but I really would like to take this card. It's just such a strong effect and limited to sweep a board that doesn't kill all of your creatures, but kills almost all of their creatures. If I had even another single green card, I'd probably pick this. If I had like a status statue or something, I think I would start to look for more payoffs. But for now, I think I'm going to take the Watcher. I don't know if I'll regret this pick or not. We'll see. It'll be worth talking about. It's a decision point for me. So I'll take the Watcher in the Mist. All right, they did fix the bots. This video was recorded after the patch that fixed the bots, because the bots were bad about taking Dimir cards for a while. But it does seem ridiculous that I ended up with a Dimir deck. It's just the way the draft worked. Always stay open to what you're being offered. But this is nuts. This late of a deadweight seems crazy to me. This card is a very premium removal card. It's dirt cheap, super good. Same with Deadly Visit. This is pack 2. So I guess if the guy in pack 1, if the bots were playing by like rules that humans would play by, we weren't being passed black cards and we were cutting black again, it would make some sense to be rewarded by getting black cards coming in this direction. That would make some sense from the logical approach to it. But still, this seems like quite a late deadweight or Deadly Visit both. Man, I'm on the Deadly Visit plan. It kills anything. It's a little bit slow, a little bit clunky. I love deadweights, and I would be very excited to get one, but I think I'm on Deadly Visit 1 ahead of Deadweight 1. Let's hope we find something else for deadweight. I like the Surveil too. I still have no payoffs for it, so maybe I'm evaluating it a little bit highly, but that's where I'm at right now. Let's take the Deadly Visit. Well, oh wow. I'm going to pass a deadweight. I feel so bad here. This is one of the cards we absolutely want in this deck. I currently have 2, 4, 5, 6 ways to surveil, and it's still pretty early in the draft. Dimir Spybug is a win condition for us. It's a menace flyer that grows as we surveil. I think it's better than deadweight right now. I need payoffs for my surveil. It's also a 2-drop, of which I have none. I want that deadweight. I'm going to pass 2 deadweights in a row like a crazy person. All right, there we go. All right, this pick here, a couple options for us. The Drake is whatever. I prefer it, and I don't often run Drakes. They feel to me like a card that, unless I'm low on playables, I often don't have room for in my decks. I play them in sealed a lot because I feel like the power level is a little lower in sealed, and therefore I have the time to play it. This card does not trade well, does not block well. It's just a little bit slow for me. The Necrolisk is a mediocre Golgari card that sometimes gives you advantage by eating pacified creatures with like Luminous Bonds or Capture Sphere or something, or if you're generating a bunch of tokens somehow in blue-green. I mean, we do have tokens, but it's still not very exciting for me, or black-green rather. So for me, what I'm looking at right now is the Burglar Rat, the Severed Strands, and the Dimir Guildgate. I like a rat just fine. It would set me up for things like more, Severed Strands later, but Severed Strands has good synergy with Murmuring Mystic already. I do need some more removal. I think I'm on the Rat ahead of the first Strands, but I do hope to pick up a Strands. I wouldn't mind the Guildgate, but I think Rat is good enough that I'm not going to take a land over it right now. This is still going to be one of my main playables. Quite a good little card overall. Always 1-for-1 gets one of their cards, and often is going to be a relevant body either in a block or potentially in a like Severed Strands scenario. So I'll take Burglar Rat here. Okay, next pick. This is a green-black payoff card. Weird to see it so late again. I guess we could see this potentially open, this color combination. Seems weird to see it though. Dowser of Lights and Radical Idea are the two I'm looking between. Shade is not very exciting for me. Sometimes you can use Shade as a mana dump in the mid game, but it's just not where I want to be. I have a lot of powerful, high-costing cards right now. Draws, it's just I have good stuff already. I don't really feel like I need to be downgrading for a Shade. Dowser is a big body, and sometimes big bodies are very relevant. It's a big blocker. He sometimes can win the game himself if he has to. He's a good target for quasi-duplicate. I have a lot of sources of Surveil too. The value of Radical Idea goes down when I have a lot of sources of Surveil, because what I'm actually trying to use Radical Idea for is keeping my flow of castable cards consistent by not getting flooded out by land. But I do have spell synergies with Radical Idea right now. I have a Murmuring Mystic. My spell count isn't huge right now. We're looking at what, 5? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spells right now. It's kind of tough. I think I'll take Radical Idea 1. The idea of getting the Murmuring Mystic value out of that is pretty high for me. But I might want a Dowser. Dowsers often come around again. We'll see. A big dumb ground creature seems like something that would be pretty good for us. But I want to hit that Murmuring Mystic synergy. I mean, we have the Quasi-Duplicate Dowser synergy, which is fine. We have the Murmuring Mystic Radical Idea. It's no particular push either way that way. My early game is getting better. We have 2 Whisper Agents to hold down the board. We'd like a little bit more. I might not be the point where I have to have Dowser. This card is going to be better versus aggro Boros. Actually slows down Selesnya pretty nicely too. This card is going to be more of a late game value card. Actually, when I think about that, I've kind of gone back and forth there. I think I will be on the Dowser plan. Hope to get another Radical Idea. This is removal, kind of, but it's very slow, very clunky removal that doesn't deal with a lot of the threats that I care about in this format. So I'm not really on the Silent Dart plan, even though it kind of looks like removal when you look at it. So take Dowser, see how it treats us. All right. Wow. Black-blue wide open. So Undercity Necrolist we talked about. It's okay. The Crab is a blocker. If I hadn't taken Dowser, this might be a little bit more appealing. Severed Strands as removal. We have now a Rat to sacrifice to it, although only really a Rat to sacrifice to it. A second Notion Rain and a second Dimir Guildgate. I'm on the second Notion Rain plan. It can sometimes be a little bit greedy versus very aggro decks, but it's huge amounts of value. I have reasons to want to cast spells. It has Surveil synergies. I'm going to take second Notion Rain over first Severed Strand. There's a Severed Strand. I will take first Severed Strand over second Dimir Guildgate. So I will get some removal out of this, which seems nice. These cards are not very exciting for me. 5 of them not in my color, although this is colorless, but it's really a Golgari card. I will take the Piston Fist Cyclops. I hope not to play it, but at the very least it is a 4/3 blocker for me, which would be fine. 2 blue, but I can cast 2 blue. I'm never going to play a Moodmark Painter, even if I'm low on creatures. This card synergizes with having more creatures, and I don't like if I'm low on creatures and I need a creature. This is a very expensive priced one whose ETB is actually worse because I'm low on creatures, so I'm never going to be there. I'll take the Sonic Assault. I can't imagine splashing red at this point, but it's always possible. And if you're on a table, I would hate draft this card over the other ones. So there we go. I don't want Dazzling Lights number 3. I'm not very close to green. Disdainful Stroke is a fine playable card. Grab that. See if we end up using it or not. I'm on the uncommon plan here. I'll take the 3/3 black card. I might even play it. And Radical Idea as pick 15 is great for us. All right. Next pack. Next pack's fairly interesting. So this is pick 3, pack 1. Drowned Secrets. This is actually fairly synergetic with our deck. Although I'm not really looking to mill people out. I have a fair number of blue spells here, but they're basically blue castables here. But my plan at the moment is to kill them with flyers. And I have a Night Veil Predator, a Murmuring Mystic, and a Watcher in the Mist to do that. And a Dimir Spybug. It seems likely that I will actually go that way. This card does nothing when you cast it and does nothing for a very long time and then eventually wins you the game. That's kind of a hard thing to be doing in Limited. And it's not whenever I draw. It's not like either of the M19 versions of this. There was the one that drew you a million cards every time you milled lands from your opponent, and then there was the other one that was just a passive kind of milling every single time you draw. This is neither of those things. This only triggers when I cast blue spells. So for me, not terribly exciting. I have to actively be doing something to progress my plan, and this cost me a card to get that down. I'm not really on the board with that. Let's take a look at the rest of it. We're pretty far from white at this point. We didn't have to make a lot of speculative picks. Maybe this wasn't the best draft to do this with, but as I said, these are going to be random drafts, and we'll do more drafts in the future where I over-explain. But I wasn't having to speculate, so I'm no way near this. The Lotless Giant is a finisher, but I have other ways to finish the game, so I'm not super excited about that either. We're nowhere near a Book Devourer. Luminous Bonds, a very powerful piece of removal or pacifism effect anyways, but again, nowhere near where we are. So for us, it really comes down to, do we want a third Notion Rain? The answer is no. Or we'd like a very valuable Artful Takedown, which is a quasi-removal. It's tempo, it's anti-tempo, and it's removal all in one. This is a very good card for us. It's another spell for our spell count. I'm quite happy to see that. So Beast Whisper getting passed along. I consider this card a bomb. I think it's very good. but it's good in green, black, or green, white. We're nowhere near double green. We're never going to be able to cast that. I think Enhanced Surveillance is generally not worth playing. We have a lot of Surveillance in our deck, and we want payoff cards for Surveillance, not more cards that don't do anything until I'm surveilling. Yes, we have a lot of surveilling, but if with a lot of surveilling, then I don't really need 4 surveil most of the time. It just tends to be too much, is what I'm getting at. There is an interesting decision here. So the card I'm most interested in, Artful Takedown, it's more removal, another spell. We just talked about how good it is. It remains that good. But I'm a little low on creatures right now, and something like a Dimir Informant or Child of Night might be somewhere I want to go. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the Artful Takedown and hope one of these wheels. At this point, I'm less interested in discussing all of the other colored cards. Our deck is very heavily in blue-black. It seems unlikely that we're going to be splashing another color at this point. And although Ledev Champion is totally decent, it's not good enough to splash for. So I'll be taking Artful Takedown here and hope one of those black creatures wheels. Wow. So many cards here for us. Swiftblade Vindicator here seems strange to me. So if you remember from pack 1, we passed a ton of red cards early. It seems like, and this is going that same direction. I guess that means this might just be hit someone right where they want it. Maybe it's not that strange, but this card's quite good. Very, very good with mentoring. But we have the option of a Chemist's Insight for card advantage, which is a good card, or a Darkblade Agent for a very solid 3-drop. I think at this point, as much as I like Chemist's Insight, I might be on the Darkblade Agent plan. This card can also, this is one of the synergetic cards with Surveil. I do have 2 sources of instant Surveil, 2 sources of main turn Surveil. I guess I have 4 sources of instant Surveil, which makes this card very nice. I can generate cards out of it. I can trade it off, or not even trade it off, with 2 Dazzling Lights for higher value creatures. Seems like I probably want another creature right now. My creature count is 1, 2, 3, 4. Probably not playing that. 5. Probably not playing that. 6, 7, 8 creatures right now. Yeah. So I'm going to need some more 2 and 3 drops ideally. I would love the Chemist's Insight, but I feel like it might be just a little bit too greedy right now. I do have 2 Notion Range to draw already, which I paid for by picking these over other things earlier. And a Radical Idea. Seems like I have a fair amount of draw and a very powerful deck right now. Take a Darkblade Agent over Chemist's Insight here, just to fill out my curve for creatures. This is a good moment to talk about that. If that were an earlier pick, like if that were maybe like my second pick or something, I would probably have picked the Chemist's Insight over the Darkblade Agent. Not only because of the if I knew I wasn't even in Dimir, for example. If I wasn't in Dimir, then that's just a clear Chemist's Insight pick because it leaves me nice and open. It's a very valuable Izzet card. It's a very valuable draw card in general. Great card. But at this stage, I have a lot of the structure of my deck. So what I need to be thinking about is what do I need to flesh out the deck to make it a playable, winnable deck? And right now I need creatures. So we're going for that. All right, this pick here, I don't need another Radical Idea. I know it has synergy with the Mystic, but I picked up a number of really good spells. I don't really need a second Disdainful Stroke. I don't mind the card. I'm happy to play 1. I'm even probably happy to play 2, but I'm not massively excited about playing 2. And I'm beginning to get worried with my card count. I have 25 playables right now already. So that means that every card that I add at this point is taking the slot of one of the existing cards. And I don't think I have a card that Disdainful Stroke's already on my short list of cards to remove here. Although I'm probably not playing these 2, but still I think we are over our playables still. Don't count the land, so it's 24. Yeah, we're exactly at our playables right now. These are 23 cards we're playing. I hope not to play this card. I hope not to play that card, but I might. This card's on my short list of cutting. Radical Ideas on my short list of cutting. We're somewhere around here for potential cuts. So any card that I add needs to be better than these existing cards. And for me, I already have my win conditions in play. I've got Nightfield Predators. I've got a fair amount of removal. I've got value cards with Quasi-Duplicate and a little bit of and flying removal here. I probably don't need Bats as a win condition. Like at this stage in the game, I might be like, man, I have no way to kill them. Bats is a way to put pressure on them. Evasive Pressure would be good, but I don't think I need to be there. So I'm probably on the Guildgate plan here. It's a little bit early maybe to pick the Guildgate because these are all decent cards, but these are decent cards that I'm not going to be playing just with the cards I already have existing. So the Guildgate goes up in value for me. If I were at a table, I would pick this up in a heartbeat. It's ridiculous. It's pick 5. What is a Niv doing around the table? This is such a bomb and limited. We're nowhere near playing it. It would be fun. It's just nowhere near that. Just hilarious to see that. Again, I'm on the Darkblade Agent. I like Darkblade Agents in duplicate. I like having my 3 drops be all Darkblade Agents and Whisper Agents if I can make it happen. This is a powerful sideboard card, but this is the type of creature I actually need in my deck right now. Fills out my curve. I'm still short on 2s and 3s. I only have 2 2s and 3 3s. That's a little bit lighter than I want to be. And I have good cards that synergize with this to take advantage of this effect. I'm 100% here, but I'm amused by Niv. I guess I'm going to pass it along and add to the problem. But at this stage, I'm pretty committed to my colors, 100% committed to my colors. I just can't afford to pick up a Niv. All right. Another great 2-drop just landed in our lap. Pick 6 Night Veil Sprite. They swear they fixed this. I swear this is recorded after the patch where they fixed all the Dimir stuff. It's funny that I'm in Dimir. I've played actually a fair number of decks now since the patch that haven't been Dimir, which has been nice. But this is a very easy Night Veil Sprite. It's late. We still don't have a million payoff cards for this. Our payoff cards are the Darkblade Agents and the Dimir Spybug. But this is a good enough 2-drop for fixing my draws. It's an evasive source of little ping damage. And it's just where I want to be in this deck. So this is very easy for me as a Night Veil Sprite. The other considerations are the Gorgon as a 3-drop chump blocker who's just going to trade off versus something better or higher value than her. But I have decent creatures for trading. These ones get Death Touch anyways, and this one a lot of the time that is. And this one often trades for something with 3 power, since it has 3 power that is. I don't need card value, of course, is great, but I don't think this card is good enough to take any cards out of my deck. I have good card value in this deck. I'd grab the Night Veil Sprite 100% of the time there. Wow. All right. My victory condition gets advanced further. Another Watcher in the Mist, a flying big threat that surveils. Is a very late Watcher in the Mist. Pick 7 means it's almost gone around the entire table. That means no one is playing blue except for me. I cut blue pretty hard, but I don't think I cut it that hard. Generally, you're going to see in a pack of 8, you're going to see at least another player playing your colors. It's just, especially with the limited number of guilds you can play in Ravnica. Seems strange to me to get that back, but I'll take it. When I look at this, there's almost nothing here that I would consider playing. I have a Mesmerist for sideboard if I'm in a position where somehow a Mesmerist is going to help me. Considering a Mesmerist is a pretty poor blocker, it's often not something you bring in even if your opponent's low to the ground, unless there is some really specific reason. I can't imagine wanting to play that. I can't imagine wanting to use any of these cards not in our colors. So that leaves the Dimir Locket and the Sprouting Renewal. Either this is uncommon drafting for my Vault progress or Dimir Locket. There's no way I want Dimir Locket in this. I mean, actually, I say that. I have 2 draw cards. I have no counter spells right now. That's not true. I have the 1 Disdainful Stroke. There's no way I'm playing that Dimir Locket. It's just, there's not enough super expensive spells in my deck to want to do that. And I have good sources of card advantage already. With the amount of surveilling I'm doing, I'm almost always going to be able to flush out lands in the mid game to force cards into my hand. I have 2 Notion Rains. I think I'm just gonna uncommon draft for the Vault progress. Yeah, it's a late Notion Rain. There might be games in which I'd bring in a Notion Rain off the sideboard. It's that or the uncommon. I would certainly never play that card. The deck quality is too high for needing to splash. It's not enough an advantage. Here I will actually take something else though that might be playable. The Dimir Informant sometimes has good matchups. A lot of 1-drops versus my opponent. This could be fine, or there's ways that could be good. Same with the Veiled Shade. This could be a win condition in a grindy game. If I top deck this in the late game, in a game where it's pretty even, I can use this as quite an aggressive use of my mana. I think it's probably more likely that I would want a Veiled Shade than a Dimir Informant. But maybe not. Maybe versus Boros, I'm going to want the Informant. I certainly don't want the Enhanced Surveillance or any of the other cards, so it's between these 2. Our payoffs for the Informant are Darkblade Agents, which doesn't have a lot of synergy with the Informant plus a Darkblade Agent, but it has a little bit, or the Spybug. I already have cards. This would come in versus Boros, probably comes in versus Selesnya. This card is something that's decent to be sacrificed. Like, I don't mind sacrificing Dimir Informant to a Severed Strands or to an Undercity Necrolisk. But this does represent, but I have now 2 flyers, 2 massive flyers, a Murmuring Mystic and a Nightveil Predator to close out the game, as well as a Dowser. I think I'm probably on the Dimir Informant over Shade draw. I'll absolutely take that Disdainful Stroke. Wow. I already have 1 Wall of Mist. I already have 2 Disdainful Strokes. Don't really need another Radical Idea, but I guess maybe. Would I ever play 2 Wall of Mist? Is there a matchup? With the Darkblade agents often being able to be forced into having Death Touch even on my opponent's turn, I have pretty decent blockers for like a Selesnya style deck. Wall of Mist slows down Selesnya because they have to go basically around it, but it's not so exciting that I really want 2 of them. I think it very unlikely that I will play a second Wall of Mist ever. There's a world in which I maybe play a second Radical Idea, and it's unlikely that I'm playing 3 Disdainful Strokes. I mean, there'd have to be like a specific card that I know I want to be countering. Maybe like a Nightveil Predator in my opponent's deck or something, and then just always leaving 2 mana open. I think it's very unlikely I'm playing 2. I mean, the deck quality is so high right now. With 30 cards, we have to cut 7, 2, 3, what is this? 2? No, not 7, because we have 2 of them there. So it's 28 cards. We need to cut 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There might be room. I don't really want to run main deck 2 Radical Ideas, but it's a possible world in which I might want to do that. It's another way to protect against flooding and trigger the Murmuring Mystic stuff. I don't think so, though. I think I'm on the Disdainful Stroke plan. There might be some matchup I run into where I absolutely need to have another counterspell. The Piston Fist Cyclops is a totally decent blocker, especially versus Boros. The high power is actually really nice. It kills a lot of creatures for cheap. I wouldn't mind it, but Vapors is also very good. Has Surveil synergies. The -1/-1 can blow up some certain decks. I think as a sideboard option, the Vapors is more interesting than the second Cyclops. So we'll take that. It's not going to start main deck. Never happened in the sideboard is fine. And Vigor Spore Worm is fine. Okay, the draft went very well for us. The power level of this deck is quite high. It just shuffled my cards in, the ones I had specifically set up to remove, which is kind of annoying. So we'll take a look at that in just a second. The Necrolisk, the Dimir Informant, the Radical Idea, some of these Disdainful Strokes. Is that it? I don't necessarily have to have 2 Dazzling Lights, but with 2 Darkblade agents and my Vampire, I kind of want to have 2 of those. The Piston Fist is a maybe. What's my creature count right now? Creature count is 15. And how many cards are we at right now? 46. So we need 6 cards out. Dowser maybe not necessary, but I like him as a big ground dude to just hold things down in the mid game. Kind of glad we picked him up. So if I did pick 6 cards out of here, and what is this? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So all but 1 needs to go. I think the Necrolisk is counterfeited by the Dowser. Kind of, he's not a big enough body for 4. I will have tokens to eat, but I'm not super excited by that. So I'm probably going to drop the Necrolisk. Doesn't have a lot of synergy with this deck. Surveillant versus Piston Fist is pretty close. They do similar things, although the Piston Fist trades up. I don't want to run 3 Disdainful Strokes main deck. I'll probably run 1 main deck, but maybe not even 1 main deck. It is nice to have counterspells. This deck is missing Devious Cover-Up. It's missing Disinformation Campaign. There are ways in which it is a problem for me, for my opponent, just having good enough deck that it would be nice to have some disruption of my opponent's plan. So maybe a Disdainful Stroke is here. I look at the rest of these. Spell count is 1, 2, 3... 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 spells already for the Murmuring Mystic. I love Radical Idea with Murmuring Mystic, but I have a lot of Surveil. And Radical Idea Jumpstart does a very, especially Radical Idea Jumpstart, does a very similar thing to Surveil in terms of just fixing your mid game. Now I can throw Radical Idea into the bin with Surveil, and then later on when I draw another land, throw Radical Idea with the land into the bin to draw another card, so that's nice synergies. But I wouldn't mind another creature here. I'm probably on the drop the Radical Idea, probably on the drop the Disdainful Stroke, but maybe not. How many instants do we hold up? We hold up Dazzling Lights, we hold up Whisper Agent, we hold up Artful Takedown. So there's going to be a fair amount of time where we're holding up instant speed removal, in which case having an instant speed counterspell would be nice. It's something else that threatens, that doesn't tell them all the information. They don't know if it's a takedown. They don't know if it's even in game 2. They don't know if it's a Disdainful Stroke, a takedown, a Dazzling Lights. They're not totally sure. Do I have spells I'm likely to be casting main phase on my turn? Not a lot. Quasi-Duplicate is probably about it. So I may or may not get to, or I guess Notion Rain also, may or may not get to attack with my Cyclops very often, although my goal is not to go through the ground. So I'm probably not on the Piston Fist Cyclops plan. I'm probably not on the Dimir Informant plan. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 drops here, and then 2 4 drops. I think we're probably okay on creatures. So I'm probably 12 is pretty low though. Somewhere in here. I like the Piston Fist that it trades up a lot of times. I don't like that it's double blue mana cost for me. Double blue might be something that is an issue. The Dimir Informant, the Surveil is always nice. I don't mind top decking a Dimir Informant, but a lot of times I don't mind top decking a Piston Fist too. Like this does a lot to our stalled board. And there's a couple of times where I'm going to get attacks out of it. I think I'll probably start one of these two cards. I'm going to run 17 lands with this deck. Surveil lets me get rid of a lot of those lands, and I want to hit my land drops consistently. The recommendations for lands are really about consistently hitting your curve. Not so much about not flooding in the late game, although of course they're related. There's an argument for not running Severed Strands here, and maybe I should think about that too. It's tempting because I have a lot of spells and a Murmuring Mystic and a Burglar Rat, so I have targets that are worth sacrificing to it. And it does kill pretty much anything and get me back in the game versus aggro stuff. But I've got a lot of removal. With 2 Artful Takedowns, 2 Dazzling Lights, which are basically quasi-removal, and a Deadly Visit, that's not it's a considerable amount of removal to be had. Also with Quasi-Duplicate, I do want creatures in play. I'm not sure I'm ever going to be Quasi-Duplicating a Piston Fist Cyclops, but there's a world in which I do that. It lets me attack with the first one. It puts a blocker on the board. If I'm in a lot of pressure, it's a cheap creature that is already on the board. I think I'm arguing into keeping the Piston Fist. We'll see. This is likely a card that gets sideboarded out a lot. And maybe I start with the Disdainful Stroke and bring Severed Strands in the game that I'm playing. So this is probably the deck I'm playing. It's questionable whether the Piston Fist versus the Disdainful Stroke, or which of the 2 of the 3 I should be playing, Disdainful Stroke, Piston Fist, or Severed Strands. And I have a deep enough pool of cards. I drafted enough cards that are good enough to play in the deck that my deck will change based on the matchup. Disdainful Strokes, if I find targets for it, will come in. If I'm against a very low to the ground aggro deck, Dimir Informant, Severed Strands might come in, Vapors might come in. If it's a very grindy game, things like Radical Idea might come in. Versus Selesnya, it's possible that Wall of Mist might come in. I might bring in hand removal if there's some reason to do that. We have a lot of options what to do here. Likely things like Notion Rain, so like 1 or 2 of those may come out if my opponents are too aggro and I just can't afford the life cost. I don't think Glaive will ever make it in. We did pick this up speculatively, but I don't think it will ever make it in with 2 Guild Gates. Yeah, the draft ended up being a little bit more straightforward than I might have liked for a guide video, and perhaps I will consider adding another draft at some point with this degree of explanation and introspection as we're doing it. But for the moment, I think we're going to call it quits here. This deck seems very good. I will record the games I play with it, although I won't be doing that immediately. And when I do, I'll add them to this playlist if you want to see how this deck plays out. Anyways, guys, hopefully you found this kind of real in-depth talk through of what we're doing helpful. And I know that we're drafting versus bots now, but that will not always be the case with MTG Arena. Also, I'd fix the land. I guess I should fix the land before I do the outro. So I don't see a reason not to just basically do even distribution of land here. Yeah, so what is this? 14, 15, 16, one more. Islands or swamps, islands. A little bit favoring islands because of the Piston Fist, the Quasi-Duplicate, the double blues over here, and the wanting to hold open blue mana for this. But I don't think I'd go any more than basically mid-range like that. So this is 17 lands with 9 sources of black and 10 sources of blue, which is pretty ideal. I think this deck should do very, very well. We could probably get blown out from very, very fast decks. We don't have great early game blockers, especially in the 2 drops. We don't have any sources of life gain, but these 3 drops are very solid. Our win conditions are quite solid. We have good removal. We have some sources of card advantage. Looking through that, the Notion Rain comes out in particular there, and we have a very deep sideboard to play with. I think the deck should go very, very well. We should probably do 5, quite honestly. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you find this helpful. Please leave the comments in the section below and let me know. And if there's different things you'd like me to do when I do another one of these a little bit later, because I will be doing more of these in the future, please let me know. And just for you guys, if you want to see more drafts, I don't always talk about them in this depth, but I do release the best game of the day every day that I play, and I release the best draft of the day as well, both of which make it to my YouTube. So there should be plenty of MTG Arena content if you want to watch limited content. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys soon.